screws loose, they done stripped the bolts on them. Shoulda never sent them to pick up the work for me. Sprayed the park and had my shit inside the car. Marcus Smart Boy was shooting with a 36 on him. Said if he wasn't in the rush, they was all goners.
All right. Greetings, Chudlings. Welcome to another episode of Chuddy's Corner, sponsored by Nick Prano Real Estate. Check out nickprano.com for all your real estate needs, local, global, international, interspatial. Big, small, he's got you covered. Check out nickprano.com. Intergalactic is the word I was looking for, not interspatial. It's Tuesday. It's June 25th. We are a day away from the draft, so we thought we'd come at everyone with a NBA draft kind of special episode for everybody. Part of my voice, we're a week after the championship. I feel like everything, all the celebrating is finally catching up, taking its toll. So yeah, we're a week away. Before we get into the draft stuff, a week after the fact, how are you feeling about everything, Chuddy? Still feeling pretty good?
Feeling pretty good, champ. No complaints over here. Celebrations, like you said, dying down, but it's still going strong.
The Sox thing last night breathed new life into everything, I feel like.
Obviously, we had the parade on Friday. It was an incredible experience all around. Just a truly joyous occasion, as I think I said probably 100 times. That was a real culmination of things, and to see everyone, and you could tell kind of just how, like, the genuine just joy and like youthful exuberance from the players. It's always cool to see in any parade, but it really did feel special. And seeing it with a lot of those guys, it brought a lot of those emotions right back from winning it on Monday, a little over a week ago. And then, like you said, it keeps rolling. We keep getting things popping up left and right. Players are all around the city doing cool stuff. Jalen's out at Fashion Week in Paris. Al's signing autographs at every Dick's Sporting Goods in Massachusetts. They're doing getting their heads shaved for charity. It was a cool moment. And then, like you said, almost the entire team at the Sox game last night. I mean, a lot of times you don't get the whole team, but almost
I think Drew was the only one missing.
I didn't see Pritchard there or
Pritchard
Tillman, but still. Even like the G League guys were all there, the whole coaching staff, everyone really cool. And I mean, the way, if you didn't see it, it's worth watching. The whole team gets introduced, all cool. And I thought maybe the coolest part at the very end announced Brown and Tatum together as a duo instead of having one guy go last. They both came out together. Tatum still has that vice grip on the Larry O'Brien trophies. Great to see. Had all the top six minus Drew throw out first pitches plus Joe. All looked pretty good. And then, you had Missoula, who looked like with his Sox uniform on, like he was either ready to step in and play some second base or he was ready to rob Fenway. Could have gone either way on that one. So a lot of cool stuff. And, of course, they're all out there partying in the bleachers, drinking it up. And sure enough, some of the magic rubs off as the Sox come back down 6-2, end the game on a walk-off. Like, how fitting. Just an amazing night in Boston. So, like I said, it's like every day is bring something new, something cool. I'll see, more tribute videos or highlights or this and that on Twitter. Can't stop watching.
Celtics just put out a great one of those, whatever those like video series that they've been doing.
Yeah,
I forget the All In Celtics ones. They just put out another one of the finals.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty. I got about 15, 20 minutes in. Then we had to stop for the pod. But
have you watched the YouTube doc yet?
No, it's like 45 minutes, right?
Yeah, I haven't watched it.
I got to watch that.
Heard it's great. I'm sure. I mean, I don't know how it couldn't be, but yeah, I'm waiting for the right moment where I have some little alone time. Don't want the in-laws to see me crying and whatever. So
yeah, no, it definitely hasn't gotten old. I love, like, there's like certain people out there like, wow, people are already done talking about it. It's like maybe in like a city that isn't Boston. Like, I don't really understand why like Heat fans are like, oh, I expected more people in Miami to still be talking about the Celtics winning. Like, it's still very fresh, very awesome up here. Every like new, I'll never shut up about it. Every like new picture or video that comes out, it's just like another just awesome feeling. The parade was great too. So still the champs.
Every time I see the merch pop up, I'm like, yep, buy. My entire wardrobe is probably just going to be Celtics championship clothes for the next year, which I'm totally
nice. But yeah, with that, I think we turn our sights now to the future. With the NBA draft. So what we'll do for this, for anybody, we'll kind of give a little kind of overview just on the draft in itself for anyone who's kind of interested in like the more macro thing with the league. And then we're going to kind of look at it, what we think the Celtics should do, what we think they might do, and maybe some players that might fit into either one of those plans. So just overall first, I mean, I'll be honest, you're going to be more of the draft expert on this. I did most of my research kind of this morning. I mean, I've been paying attention a little bit here and there, just about who's all right. Obviously, you pay attention a lot in March Madness, so names that come up through there, I'll recognize those guys and such. But definitely more of a pros guy. But the Celtics had the 30th pick and the 54th pick. Brad Stevens has never before picked in the first round. But before we get into what the Celtics are going to do, what do you make of this draft class? Because what I see when I'm looking at this draft class is, first of all, only one of the top 5 players, at least on the board I'm looking at, are coming from college, either international or I think one's a G League player, which I thought is just a little bit interesting. Half of the top 10 picks are kind of in the same boat. I don't know. To me, it seems a bit underwhelming. The class doesn't seem like there's any. I remember earlier when we went to the Celtics game, we saw the Wizards play-by-play guy. I'm blanking on his name right now. He's on the cover of the NCAA video game. Drew Gooden, yes. And it was seeming like everyone was all over Alexander Sarr. I see him now as 4th on this list I'm looking at. Obviously, it's not the end-all of lists. But, like, who's the best player in this? Is there, like, a top best player in the draft? Like, not obviously there's nothing like Wemby last year, but is there someone that's, like, a consensus? Or is there really some uncertainty of who's going to go first? Because that'd be cool if that's the case.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of exciting.
No, there really is a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of it is because, like you said, I think it just is a little bit of an underwhelming draft, especially at the top. There's no clear-cut superstar. I mean, like you said, last year was a bit of an outlier with the Wemby situation, but even in most years, there's a clear-cut, like, top 2 or 3 guys where you're like, all right, this guy seems like it's pretty easy to imagine them becoming a superstar. This year, it seems like everyone, even in the top, has some pros and cons, which I think should make for a very fun and exciting draft just as someone, like, casually watching it, because I think everywhere from the first few picks on, you could get some picks that you're like, holy shit, there's so little consensus. A lot of people are comparing it to the 2013 draft, which was the Anthony Bennett one, which isn't great drafting at the top. But I think the theme is, like, it's most people seem to think it's a good draft with plenty of good players, plenty of depth, and that, like, when you're picking late, there could be lots of good, like, littered with role players, and inevitably every year there are guys who become stars. It's just tough to peg who, but it is just weird to see so little consensus at the top. And I think a lot of people have kind of been saying all year, down year for the draft. Like, last year, obviously, was the big year with Wemby. Next year's supposed to be the big year with Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, and those guys. This one's kind of like in the middle where there's no clear guy. So you mentioned Sarr was kind of the guy for a while. Now it sounds like Zachary Rissachet from France is the guy. Big, tall, versatile wing. But again, super raw, questionable shooting and ball skills. Like, he's a project.
Who's this Nikola Topic?
Nikola Topic. So he just tore his ACL during pre-draft workouts. So anyone drafting him would be like a year. He's probably going to go later in the top 10. I like his upside. Questionable defender. Could be like a really good do-it-all guard. But the shot
that literally just happened. This board still has him as number 1.
No, that was 2 weeks ago. Rissachet is the closest thing to a lock at this point. I think the odds have him closer to minus 200. It's been weird with, the Hawks obviously winning the lottery kind of threw a wrench into things because they're not, like a true rebuilding team. But so now they kind of control a lot where it's like, what are they going to do? Are they going to trade Trae Young, DeJounte, blow it up, and truly rebuild around this pick? Are they going to try to trade this pick for a win-now player? Or are they just going to draft based on need the guy who they think would help the team win right now? So I think that's part of the confusion at the top, is that it's just such a weird team. If someone like the Wizards or the Hornets had gotten the number 1 pick, I think it'd be like, all right, they're obviously just going to take the best prospects available. But no one really knows what the Hawks are thinking. They haven't even worked out Sarr, who was like if like you said, if there was a consensus, it was Sarr for a long time. But even Sarr, I mean, his upside comps are guys like Nick Claxton, where he's like they think he can be a really good versatile defensive center, but his offensive skills are questionable. Like, they're saying his upside is maybe like an Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., which is a really good player. But, I mean, you wait all these years, you get the number 1 pick. You're hoping for a guy who you're like, all right, the path to superstardom is pretty clear. And the problem is just none of the guys at the top of these drafts really have that. I mean, you see a lot of guys having Reed Shepherd going as maybe the top prospect or so. I mean, that's a small off guard who might not even be a lead guard. Like, people are comparing him to like an Austin Reeves. I mean, I heard Russillo calling him maybe like a rich man's Peyton Pritchard, which, that could be a good player, but these are the kind of players we're talking about as top 5 picks. If you walk away, you walk away with a guy like that in the top, and obviously he could be much better than that, but again, a 6'3" guard, not super athletic, really good shooter, but it's just fascinating to watch, and that makes me excited kind of just as like a guy who likes watching this stuff, because again, I think there is so much variability, and it's going to be interesting to see what team near the top just takes a huge swing at a guy that isn't being mocked even in the top 10, maybe not even in the lottery, whatever. And I think teams are hesitant to tip their hand as well because of that. And I think you could see a lot of movement too, where teams have a higher grade on someone, they can try to dive up and go attack that position and get their guy. So I think there's a lot of good players, a lot of players people like. There's just no clear-cut top class, no clear-cut like emerging superstars as we've had in years past, almost every year since, again, that Anthony Bennett Oladipo draft, which ended up being a disaster.
Yeah, I'm looking at that draft right now, and it's pretty brutal.
It's grim.
Oladipo obviously in second.
Yeah,
that was I got an ad playing on my phone here. Hold on.
No free
Don't
ads.
know what tab it's coming from. No free ads. Yeah, we'll just turn the volume down. I don't know which tab that's coming from. I got a lot of draft tabs open right now. Back to that 2013 draft. Yeah, so Giannis went obviously 15th in that draft. Other than that,
Right.
And Oladipo, there's no, and Rudy Gobert. Those are the only 3 people that ended up being all-stars out of that whole draft. And Gobert and Giannis were obviously later guys who weren't like super highly. It's not like people thought those guys were game changers going in. So what I don't understand is why the 2 guys, Stephon Castle and Donovan Clingan, like why aren't they? I feel like the back-to-back champs. Like they're in the top 10, predicting the top 10. Those are some guys that I don't know.
Yeah,
that might be someone that I'd go out. I'd rather reach for one of them than some of these other guys. I don't know anything much about the international guys, but like exactly what you said with Reed Shepherd is he's just like a small. I don't know. It could turn into something, but I feel like that is kind of a position that in the NBA has just kind of gotten proven that isn't if that's like your top guy, which when you're drafting a first overall pick, you kind of want that, or an early first round pick, you kind of want that. I don't really think that he fits that role.
Unless that's like it becomes a Steph Curry, like you said, that position's not usually a guy who you want to draft like that high on the draft. There's plenty of teams, like a good team that might need him, and he could be a really good player, but it's just, again, seems underwhelming for a top pick. And like you said, there's always Giannis's and Gobert's. Nikola Jokic obviously was a second-round pick, so it's like these guys happen, and there's no way to predict them, and I think that's what people are saying. There's so many good players and unknown players in this draft that we could get stars, and almost the odds tell you they're almost certainly somebody from this draft, like guys will end up being all-NBA players and whatnot. It's just really tough to peg who. As far as the UConn guys, I like them both. Stephon Castle was really good defensively, but his offensive game was completely underwhelming, and it's hard to tell how much of that is just UConn was such a good, deep, balanced team that they didn't need him to do a lot, or he's just like not really that good. I've seen some people are in love with him, say they think he should go first overall. He can do it all, this, that, and the other. It was like, well, he didn't really display any skills shooting. His ball handling and passing was like suspect. It's like he can do it all, but can he do any of it like well other than defend? I think he's going to be a good player, but I still think like making the leap that he's going to be a superstar to me is a bit of a reach, but he'll still go early. I know the Spurs really like him at 4, so I think he's a guy who could go in the top 5. And again, it's like a safe pick. We've all seen it. We know he's at the very least going to be a really good defensive player. If the shot and some of his offensive ball skills pick up, yeah, he could be a star for sure. And with Clingan, I think it's almost similar to what we said about Reed Shepherd, but the opposite, where it's like instead of that point guard, it's like we know exactly what Clingan is. He's a really tall center, a really good rim protector. But again, he's not like the flashy athlete. He's probably, projecting that he'll ever become a good shooter is questionable. So like, yeah, that's another position where in the NBA, like a big center who can't shoot is good. But again, it's like that what you want at the top. I don't know. So again, there's some teams who are like, well, just give me the sure thing. Give me that anchor under the rim who can protect. And, he could become like a Rudy Gobert type player, which is a really good outcome. And Clingan is a guy who could go number 1 when the latest intel on the Hawks said they were choosing between Risa Shea and Clingan at number 1. And again, I think some of this is smoke screens too, because teams want to trade up, but there are a lot of teams who want an elite rim protecting center. Clingan, at least, looks like he'll fill that position at 7'2", and with what we just saw, how good of a defensive player he was. But again, that's in college. Is he going to be versatile enough to switch out onto the perimeter? Is he ever going to develop any outside game on offense? At this point, he doesn't even really have like a floater game. His offense was essentially like putbacks, and like alley-oops and stuff, which again is good, but we're talking about top few picks in the draft. Like he doesn't look like he has that like at least offensive superstar upside.
All right, yeah, to me again, it looks like I'm just going through all this list, and I feel like again, I don't watch nearly as much college basketball as I used to watch, but I just feel like there's very few names that I'm seeing here. A lot of them that are obviously international players, like I said, but a lot of these names I'm just kind of like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, I don't even remember like hearing about this guy in college. And again, that's probably my fault.
Be happy to tell you about them if you have any specifics.
All right, tell us about Jacoby Walter from Baylor.
Jacoby Walter, Baylor, yeah, really good 3-and-D guy. He was projected to be a little better, came along a little slowly. Maybe not like the best athlete and a little undersized to play that wing position, but good defender, as most of those guys who come out of Baylor are. Good shooter. Again, I think he's a really good player, but it's just hard to project him that he'll be much more than like a really good role player, which again, good role players are great. I don't know if he has the star upside. He was someone who I was hoping if he played a little worse might slip through the cracks and get to the Celtics, but that seems unrealistic. He'll probably go.
Yeah, he's at 15th on this list that I'm at. That I'm looking at. That hasn't got the torn ACL at 1 though. So
good player though.
Wake
great
up,
name.
Tankathon.
Oh, Tankathon.
Great name.
Tankathon. How recent of a mock are you looking at from Tankathon? There's no way they've.
It says updated 20 hours ago.
I'm looking at the Tankathon mock draft right now. They have Risa Shea number 1, Sar 2, Shepard 3.
Oh, I'm looking at the big board, not the mock draft. Look at the big board.
So I think that is reasonable because again, if you're projecting just like if you're a team, like the Wizards,
like I think who's the best? Like
right. Well, and again, if it's just tough to draft the players is going to sit out at least a year, and it currently has a torn ACL, it makes things tough, especially for a team like the Hawks that probably doesn't want to sit and wait on their hands for a year, and they have 2 lead guards already. But I think there are a lot of teams, if you look at some of those teams in the lottery who can afford to take a year, the Spurs with those 2 picks, like they could grab Topic and just be like, fuck it, we'll be bad or whatever for another year, get another high pick and have this guy coming back with Wemby, like all that shit, that would work for them. I know the Jazz would love for Topic to make them with the 10th pick. So I think, overall he's still one of the best players. It's just the torn ACL throws a major wrench into things. Obviously.
I mean, that doesn't make any guys seem
we've seen
draft.
it with guys who sat out their whole rookie year with Blake Griffin did it, Ben Simmons. I mean, Embiid sat out 2 years. Like it's happened and worked out, and it's happened and not worked out. So at a certain point, I think he'll become such a good value though that you're like, all right, we'll eat this for a year happily to potentially get the best player in the draft.
Yeah. They have your guy Jacoby Walter going to the Sixers.
Yeah, well, he'd be a good replacement for Buddy Hield.
Yeah, all right. I don't know. I mean, do you have any other players like that you want to mention, like outside of just Celtics, that are just like decent
near the top
prospects that might surprise people? I mean, who's a guy that maybe is getting a little bit like underrated that you think actually might be pretty good for a team? Maybe not around the top, but someone kind of in the middle. Like well, no, he's second round. Give me this guy first, and then after that, I want you to give me who. Okay, go ahead. Give me the guys you like.
In the lottery guys who won't be there for the Celtics, but guys who I am a believer in the somewhat early parts of the draft. Start with Devin Carter out of Providence, Anthony Carter's son, obviously longtime NBA vet. He is just an absolute dog. I think he's just underrated. I think amazing defender, and I think a better offensive player than people think. I think he could be really good.
Is he kind of that short guard though that we were just talking about?
6'4", 6'5", but really good defender. I think he'll be fine. I think his floor is like a Marcus Smart type of player, but I think if his offense gets better, he could be like really, really good.
Right.
Again, I was high on Topic before the injury. I still, again, think he's a worthy draft pick. I just think it makes it tough. Matas Buzelis is a guy internationally. We saw him in the Rising Stars game. He hit that game-winning shot over Brandon Miller. His shooting has been suspect. I mean, again, it's 6'10", international guy. He's got some shades of Franz Wagner. I think there's some hope there. I think Ron Holland from the G League is another guy, a worthy shot. He was projected to be one of the top picks. He fell with a tough year on the G League team, but that Ignite team was an absolute disaster. I think it was kind of an unfair reflection on him. I think whoever gets him could be getting one of the best players in this draft.
Do you think anything like with how Scoot Henderson turned out turns anyone off to these G League guys?
I mean, yes and no, and I think the jury's obviously still out on Scoot, but I think it's definitely part of it, and I think this year the Ignite was even more of a disaster than they were last year, but I think it was such a disaster that I think teams might actually be talking themselves the other way of being like, okay, it's kind of unfair to even judge based on that year because it was such a mess. Yeah. I think Holland in the right situation still could be really good. Big wing, super athletic, good defender, and has some offensive skills. Again, he's a good jump shot away from having that. He has the star like makeup of a guy who if it all hits, he can be a star. And the fact that he's dropped out of the top 10 to me is crazy. Cody Williams, another one from Colorado. That's Jalen Williams from the Thunder's younger brother. Cody's a little bigger, maybe not as polished with the ball, but I think a better athlete, maybe, a better defender. He was playing injured this year at Colorado, still looked really good. That's a guy I would definitely take a shot on, and I think some team's going to do really well with him. And then I'm going to butcher the name, but Tijan Salon, the French kid, not Risache, not Sarr, the third French kid off the board, I really like, and I've heard the Spurs.
Look at the French. The French is a basketball. What's going on in France?
It's becoming a basketball hub, no question about it. But I think I've heard the Spurs might sneaky want him at 8, so he's another guy I believe in. Again, it's hard to pinpoint anyone that I don't like because there's just so much uncertainty. And again, it's not so much that I don't like any of these guys. It's just I don't know that I'd feel great drafting them in the top 5, top 10. Dalton Connect scares me. Just not sure. He's already old. I think he screams like an Adam Morrison type, who's just really good in college. Not sure it's going to translate. I already mentioned why Shepard scares me, at least that early. Rob Dillingham scares me. He is just so friggin' small. To weigh 160 pounds after coming to the pros, I know he's got amazing skills on offense, but that to me would be a bit of a red flag, a bit scary.
160 pounds is crazy.
Yeah, he's very small, very, very small. So, again, one of the most skilled offensive players and guards in this draft, no doubt. And, had his moments looking good and all that at Kentucky, but that would still scare me a little bit. And then that's it. I mean, the top guys, Risache, like I said, project. Sarr, probably a bit of a project, but the kind of guys I can at least see building around. And, that's, again, it's I'm kind of.
that's good. That's a good list. We don't got to get. Don't feel like you got to read. You almost got the whole list down here.
I just think the one takeaway is I'd be very bummed out if I was one of those teams like the Wizards who's been pretty bad, finally got a high pick, and it's in a draft where it's it's going to be hard to talk yourself into all right, we just got the star of the future and the guy we can
the centerpiece.
Whereas last year between Wemby, Brandon Miller, maybe we'll see what happens with Scoot, but there was at least 5-6 guys you could talk yourself into last year. All right, if we get a top 3, top 5 pick, we could get the next guy.
Mm-hmm.
And next year's class looks like it'll be another year like that. So to have this year be the year where you get this kind of luck, obviously, like we said, there's great players inevitably come out of every class, but this year it just seems like they're really hard to pinpoint and they might be, fewer and farther between than usual. So it is what it is. But like I said, for neutrals like us and for someone who's, NBA champion sitting with the 30th pick and basically just looking for role players, anyway, couldn't be better.
Seems like a solid draft, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, it seems like you kind of hinted to it earlier. This might kind of be one of those drafts where maybe we see a lot more trades and movement because one team may feel totally different about some of these guys or something that this guy might offer. So that could at least, if people are kind of this draft's kind of going to be boring, there might at least be a good amount of Woj bombs and shit like that throughout the draft. So that to look forward to at least. Teams are going to value guys differently when it's like this. So that'll at least make for some excitement.
I've heard a lot of teams trying to move up, the Lakers. Obviously, the Lakers are always making crazy trades, but they're talking about they could trade their 17th pick down to 29th with Utah to get a better player. And people are just in this draft, there's barely any difference in value between 17th and 29th because that's how all over the place the boards are. Where, again, especially once we get through those top few guys, it's just if you like someone, you like them. And I think it could be more things in the moment where I think there could be teams that have late first round picks and might really like some guy at the top but think they have no chance and see suddenly someone they projected as a top 5 pick has fallen to 12, 14, and then they're we got to move up to grab this guy. So I think there could be a lot of teams trying to move up kind of into the middle, late part of the first round because they just can't believe a guy is still on the board.
Nice. All right. Well, that'll be exciting. So hopefully there'll be some fireworks. All right, let's pivot to the home team here. So again, Celtics have 30th and 54th pick. Was it 54th? Is that part of the Grant Williams?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so 54th and 30th. I mentioned it before. Brad Stevens has never picked in the first round. He's always traded out of the first round. So I want to do a couple things. We'll see if we think we're going to trade out or not. But I don't know if that involves listing all the players we want to pick. So if they're going to pick at 30th, I have a couple different guys. I have 2 guys around that 30th spot and this is very high-tech proprietary information that I use I put the numbers in, I put what I like, I put what I think we need in, it shuffles them out.
Love it.
I got 2 names. I got Baylor Shireman
Love
from
it.
Creighton.
Yep.
He's a little old. He's almost 24 years old.
It's fine.
But I think that's good experience. It looks like his projected NBA 3-point percentage is .395. Not bad. Could get higher, of course. But he's a 6'7". He's 6'7", kind of small forward. He feels sort of like that. Kind of like the sort of the mold of like those wing players that we like to bring in. He's good at rebounding. He's good at defensive rebounding. His knocks, like I said, at his draft age, his offensive rebounding, his blocks, his wingspan ratio is a little bit concerning. So we'll have to keep an eye out for his wingspan ratio. But I don't know. I was just, again, this is just, some proprietary info. I can't really get into the details of how I came up with this. But what do you think about possibly, and I have one more guy, so don't go into other, you can go into your other guys. What do you think of Baylor Shireman? I am concerned about his wingspan ratio. That is a big red flag. But everything else I like.
Like Shireman a lot. I would say the best shooters and one of the best offensive players in this entire draft. His knack for the game, his ball skills, he can play with or without the ball, are great. Very cerebral player. Love everything he does on that end. And big for, he plays almost like a shooting guard, small forward, but he's almost 6'8", bigger player. His athleticism, quickness is a concern. He was, I think he had an Achilles injury or something too that he's fighting through. So to me, the biggest concern would be on the defensive end. And I think one of the things to look for, whether the Celtics draft or not, to me is like, look how this team just won and the mold that like they've clearly targeted a certain kind of players that they think are versatile, can fill a lot of needs, can play well on defense, ideally switchable, and can play with the ball or without the ball on offense and can shoot. Shireman to me checks a lot of those boxes. The big question to me will be, can we put him out there on defense without him getting targeted? He's got the size and the smarts that I think he can make it work, but I think he's going to struggle with some of the athleticism stuff, some of the foot speed at the next level. You mentioned didn't block a lot of shots for his size even in college, didn't steal the ball, so he's not getting his hands on a lot of balls. I just think the Celtics don't want to get too far away from what we do and what's successful, especially if we're going to draft a guy who's almost 24 years old. Not a prospect, if we're drafting someone at that age, almost drafting someone at all, ideally it's someone who can immediately be part of the rotation, help us out, fill some of the losses of guys we might lose like O'Shea Brissett and others. So I think offensively he checks all the boxes for me and then some. My concerns are on the other end. But again, at 30, you're not going to find a perfect player. Shireman is one of the guys I had on my list. I really like him. And again, I think he really could be one of the best offensive players in the entire draft. Lights out shooter at the very least. So worthy of a flyer at that point, to say the least.
All right. Good call. Good call by me.
Yeah, I like it.
All right. The other one I have, Jalen Tyson.
Jalen Tyson, love it.
It's a Cal Bear named Jalen.
Spelled differently.
I feel like that's spelled differently, but
he's got
sounds the same.
Half Jason, half Jalen with the spelling.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So the name is prophetic in a way. Yeah, the name works. Seems like a decent rebounder, some points. Again, he also has the wingspan ratio issue. I think I might just be attracted to the wingspan ratio. I would love to know how. Apparently he's 6'6" and 3/4 with a 6'8" wingspan.
Yeah, that
ratio is seemingly a little bit off, but I think he's listed as a guard, but I think that size, almost 6'7", he can sort of play. He can kind of play also that sort of guy out on the wing, the small forward type of position.
Yeah.
Again, kind of just based on it. I guess I'm basing a lot of this just on their size, not necessarily their wingspan. But it just kind of seems, again, you talked about the mold of kind of players that we want. I don't know what this guy is defensively. You probably have a little bit more info on that. But it seems all right. The 3-point shooting isn't great, but I do also think that's the kind of thing when that could also just be like where you're at. I mean, I think that there's some players who might not have been very, no one would have thought that Al Horford would be a reliable 3-point shooter, and then came here and now he's pretty reliable. So it doesn't always work that way, but I think that's my only other guy that I had if we're using. Yeah, these other guys are a little bit later.
Okay.
If we're using that 30th pick, those are two guys that I sort of am targeting. What do you think about Jalen Tyson, and who do you have for one or two players? All right, here we go.
I like Tyson a lot. The
system's
Tyson
good.
Is an interesting one because he transferred multiple times. Cal was actually his third school in 3 years, which is you could take that a number, that could be a red flag or it could be a good thing.
Loyalty issues.
Well, perhaps, but he had a couple rough years. Really came into his own this year at Cal. You mentioned his body kind of makes him seem like a wing player, but he really thrived at Cal this year as kind of their lead guard on offense. He was doing a lot of the work, which again, I think that's part of that shooting thing where I think he was probably overtasked being like a lead creator and such a ball dominant guy where it's like he can do it, but he was probably tasked with
his stat strengths are his assists, so he's a good
he had a ton of
assist guy.
turnovers. He had a ton of turnovers. He didn't shoot great. His efficiency stats weren't great. But again, I think that's just probably him being asked to do a little too much on a team that already wasn't very good. So I think a lot of forcing, a lot of that stuff. But, I mean, you can see it. This guy could get into the lane. He could beat people off the dribble. He can body people. He's really strong, got a great body. He can kind of bruise people down low, get to the basket, and keep that up. Like, not the best athlete, but he just uses his size and his body really well. His like step back and mid range shooting is really good too, and I think he can improve the 3-point shot. Like you said, there's no reason, like no issue with his mechanics and all that stuff. I think it's more, I think with a better shot diet, playing more off the ball, or as a guy, like I think he could play with a lot of the starters and more of an off ball role, space the floor, be a good shooter, a good guy who can attack closeouts, a secondary creator, or someone who can come off the bench, maybe run the offense in spurts here and there for a few minutes, give us a little like microwave offense. Solid, versatile defender, not the best, but I think someone certainly good enough with some work he could fit into the scheme. So yeah, Tyson's a guy I'm really high on, and like you mentioned, with the Jalen name coming from Cal, there's just like a lot of good connections already out there. So yeah, if he's still on the board at 30, I would love that.
All right. Seems like there's also a French guy hovering around the 30th, Pacome Dadier.
Dadier, yeah, big fan of Dadier's as well. Don't know, obviously, if he'll still be available when we pick, but he was another guy I had on my list.
Yeah, that's the big board, not the mock draft.
Really like the French guys, obviously, have done really well lately, but he's another big wing. I think he's almost like 6'8", 6'9", but he can handle the ball a little bit. He can shoot a little bit. Really good off ball, really good pull-up guy. He's just raw, so he'd be a little more of a prospect. One of the younger players, not even 19 yet, so I don't know if he'd be, a G League guy. I don't know if he'd play overseas, which again are things the Celtics can obviously afford at this point. It's just I don't know if that's exactly what they're looking for. But if they're looking for a guy who's maybe not going to contribute to the rotation right away, Dadier is definitely someone I'd be looking at. I think the upside is through the roof for a pick that late.
And what about Bobby Klintman?
Bobby Klintman,
Swede.
Yeah, another
is that Swedish flag?
Yeah, he's a Swede, played in the NBL, which obviously is one of the best leagues outside of the United States. We've seen a lot of guys come over from there before. Klintman, another guy, really big, kind of versatile wing player who could potentially play like some big guys in small ball lineups. I think he could play on the wing too. He's got some ball skills. Again, just pretty raw. But I think again, if you're going for upside and someone who maybe won't be able to help immediately, but could be a better like long-term part of the thing, I think Klintman's a really good player. I mean, again, he's almost like 6'10". He's a little bit length too. Like he's got to put on some muscle and things like that. But I think he could
only
at least
a 6'11" wingspan. Also got a wingspan ratio issue.
Yeah, that's
I haven't seen one person on this whole list that they said the wingspan ratio is positive. Yeah. Great wingspan ratio on this guy. Yeah.
No, I think Klintman, if he gets a little stronger, gets a little better, like he seems like he could at least be a really good 3-and-D guy. And again, with that size and athleticism, could be something. So
Zach Edey has a positive wingspan ratio. I just checked. Zach Edey.
Yeah.
So, all right. So do you have anyone at 30th that you also like, or do you think that they're even going to take a pick at the 30th? Do you think they're going to trade out of it?
Yeah. So I mean, I think that is the big question. What will the Celtics actually do? Obviously, a lot of optionality with the pick. I think definitely don't be surprised if we get like word that Stevens is basically traded pick 30 for like 2 second rounders, or even like 2 future second rounders or something like that. Because I think financially, every dollar counts. Obviously, every roster spot counts. And again, I mean, where the Celtics are, like there couldn't be possibly a team that's more in win now mode. So if there isn't someone that we think can kind of help us, like I don't know if we can afford to use a first round pick on a project. Maybe a second round pick we can add to our kind of draft and stash. But again, I think even, most of the roster's coming back. I think we're going to try to bring back most of the free agents. I think the guys we lose at this point, I think we're going to use our vet mins on some like ring chasers, hopefully to fill that role. I've heard a little buzz about maybe like an Eric Gordon type of guy. And then I think if we lose someone like O'Shea Brissett, we might see, it could be Jordan Walsh's time to shine and move into the rotation. So I'm kind of bracing for anything. I think there's a very good chance they move the pick, and I think it's going to be a trade that people probably kind of like roll their eyes at, like, what are you doing? But I think the Celtics kind of need to put things out a little bit, so I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, and I don't think And I don't think the 30th pick in this draft has a ton of value. So if people are like, oh, 2 seconds, I think it does. It kind of comes down to what you just said, where it's like, where are we going to put this guy anyway? So if it's like we're going maxed out on money on the guys that are helping us win right now. Yeah. So I think this idea of like draft and stash guy, I feel like we already even are kind of filled in that. Like Jordan Walsh again had a great first year down with the main Celtics. So it's kind of
what about Bagarin and Yamatar?
He's not a
those guys are coming over. Get in the rotation. You kidding me?
Oh my god, yeah. Oh my god, are you still on that guy? No.
Yes.
Is he actually really? That's still a thing?
I mean, he's still
okay. Jesus,
he's still a real person.
He's alive. He's a person. Yeah.
I wouldn't expect.
But no, what I'm saying, like even that, like you said, I feel like they might be more willing to kind of give, whether it's a vet minimum or again, I think Jordan Walsh, could again not be like a difference maker per se, but jump in and give us a few spark plug minutes. We knew that spark plug guy if O'Shea is gone. He opted out of his player option. So, I would be surprised if they did use the pick for kind of all those reasons. There's not really anyone there, obviously aside from the few guys that I listed, but obviously the wingspan ratio issue could give them some pause.
Of course.
So I think they will probably trade out of it now and get a couple second round picks. I don't know. Would those be like future second round picks? Because I don't really see a value in getting more second. Like if we just have a ton of second round picks this year.
I think it could be a little of both because I think we've seen you and I have talked a lot on the show about how those second round picks do end up becoming assets down the road. So it's like they might seem like nothing in the moment, but then you see these trades get done where it's like, oh, team gave up 3 second round picks and got like a good role player. So it's definitely good to have. And I mean, the Celtics have always been really good about kind of just keeping that like treasure chest full of assets. So I think it can never hurt to have more things to throw around when you're in this mode. I also, with the way the contracts work now, like having a second round pick under contract was actually good is massive. And that's kind of what we did last year. If you recall, we had that late first round pick. We turned it into the 2 seconds, traded another one of them out for something else and got Jordan Walsh at 35th, which again is the difference between 35th, 30th is 5 picks. And by that point, like we said, there's no consensus at the top. So again, there could be someone who we like at 30 who's available to us at 54. Like that's not insane to say in this draft. So if we can move it down for what we think is good value and still get a couple cracks at it, and then that second round contract where you now I think doesn't count against the cap, and you can get the guy for 4 years, they can be on a 2-way or like play in the G League still. Like exactly what we did with Walsh last year. If we can get guys like that. That's kind of like the ideal situation where those first round contracts, I mean, still like it's not going to kill us obviously or anything like that, but it's a little different and it wouldn't be as ideal to have a guy in that situation who isn't someone who we think can at least contribute to the team somewhat soon or we're just super high on. So I think I'm sure they're approaching this draft with kind of from all angles and with an open mind to whatever. But I think, the phone is very much open and anyone who calls up with a good offer, I think they'll at least be listening to. But I mean, again, they could be in love with Jalen Tyson or Baylor Shireman or some other player at 30. And if they're there, they might just be like, hell yeah, we'll take him. And we think he can be, in our top 10 immediately.
I love it. That would be fun. I would then kind of become the draft expert, I think, on the show. Yeah. If that were to happen. But
for sure.
All right. So it seems like, maybe if they do love some of those guys, they'll take it. I think they're probably going to trade back. Is there guys with that 54th pick that you think they might like? I have a couple here. I don't know if I'm going to do the same thing. I can give those to you.
Like I said, it's such a crapshoot that I feel like I've seen mock drafts that have guys who could, in one mock draft, I'll see them going in the top 30. In other mock drafts, I'll see them going late in the second round. So like a lot of these guys, I think it depends almost how much the team likes them. And again, where we're probably going to be moving around anyway. Right now we have 30 and 54. By the time the draft starts, we could have, 42 and 51, or we could have no picks, or we could have 4 picks in the second round, or like anything's possible. So, and again, once you get past, especially the lottery, like it's such a crapshoot that I think it's tough to even pigeonhole guys. Like it's tough to say that there's someone who definitely we could get at 30 and definitely couldn't get at 54. There's not a lot of guys. So I'll kind of go through some names, like a little bit rapid fire, say a couple sentences. If you have anything to add, fine. But I'm going to start with guys who are projected a little higher, who might be more reaches, and then I'll get down to guys who might be available with that second round pick. If that makes sense.
So I want you to also give us who you think. I want you to also give us who you think the quesarita of the draft is going to be.
Sounds good.
The guy who's going to get drafted during a commercial break and be an absolute star.
Okay.
So if you mention that name, shout him out as your quesarita.
Okay.
I have a quesarita pick.
Okay.
But you can go for it.
I know what my quesarita pick is, actually. All right. So the guys who I think could be there at 30 and would be great, Day'Ron Holmes out of Dayton. Versatile big guy. I think could immediately be a good backup center. He can shoot threes. He can play on the perimeter. Really good motor. Could potentially be a switch big on defense. He would be just an immediate awesome backup big, which is kind of his position of need. Khalil Ware from Indiana, same mold. Probably won't be on the board, but again, those two guys would just be like dream picks who could possibly fall to us, and I think could immediately play a lot of minutes for us at backup center, especially if Porzingis, is out a lot. I think either way, him and Al are going to play even less than they did this year. Cornette and Tillman still up in the air if they're coming back. So if there is a position like of need where we think we can...
Is Tillman a free agent?
Yeah. And Keita, we just picked up Keita's option, so he'll be back. But if we see someone who we think could at least battle like Keita for minutes, I think that's going to be a real role in the regular season that's important. So guys like Day'Ron Holmes, Khalil Ware, Yves Missy from Baylor, if those guys are available. Missy's not as versatile as the other two. He's more of a true like rim protector, lob threat. But again, for a backup big guy, you could do a lot worse. I really, really like all three of those guys. But again, they're probably unrealistic. Staying with centers, but guys who I think will be there. Adam Bona from UCLA. This guy is an absolute beast, an absolute monster. I keep seeing people say he has the highest motor of anyone in the draft. I've watched some of his tape. I mean, this guy, I don't know if there's it's not like quite has that dog in him, but it's more like has that like Tasmanian devil in him. I don't know. Like he's just like plays like an absolute lunatic.
Okay.
But he has got defensive player of the year in the Pac-12. He's just like blocks everything at the rim, gets every rebound, flies around. So again, if you're looking for a guy, backup center to just come in and play like 10, 20 minutes a game, he could be a guy very raw, sketchy on offense, not a good foul shooter, very little touch, can't do much other than kind of screen, rim run. So he's almost in that like Keita role. But if we want to take another swing at a guy like that, I love the upside, just love the way he plays.
I have another great stat on him.
Okay.
6'9.5", 7'3 3/4" wingspan. That is a 2+ positive wingspan ratio.
Oh, that is massive
per Tankathon. So
I love that.
I love that pick.
All right,
I love that.
Perfect. And then the last big guy on my list, Oso Iguodala from Marquette. He's a guy I think could be available with our second pick. Again, got some like not the best athlete, not huge, but he might have like the
Who was that? What was that name? Osorano?
Oso is his first name. Iguodala is his last name. Went to Marquette.
Oh.
Really good college player. They say he might have the highest basketball IQ in the entire draft. He just really, really knows the game. Really smart player, which is another thing I think the Celtics are targeting, guys who can fit into the scheme and be in the right place, make the right play. That's something I don't think you'll have to worry about with him. I think he's another guy who could be a good backup big right away, confident with the ball, makes the right reads on defense. Again, if not the best athlete and not the best upside, but if you're looking for a guy who can come right in and be a good backup center, I think Iguodala would be another really good pick. So I like that move as well. He's more of the other guys were mostly reaches. I think Bona and Iguodala could be there in the second round for sure. The first three probably not. Might not even be there for 30th. So that's kind of my list for center. Then as we move into like kind of wings or off-ball guys, my number one name, Ryan Dunn out of Virginia. Again, probably won't fall to 30, but I've seen him in the late 20s mix a couple times. I've seen him in the second round in a couple mocks. He went to Virginia. This guy is like the best defender in the draft, I would say, hands down. He can guard legitimately 1 through 5. Like he could be a one-man wrecking crew, change a defense, like Kawhi Leonard
like that.
Upside on defense. Literally, he's like 6'8". He can guard centers. He can guard point guards. Watch some of his defensive tape. This guy's unreal. The problem is
positive wingspan ratio.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. He looks like a center out there sometimes blocking shots. So he is like, you can't get a better defensive player. I would absolutely love it. His shot was abysmal last year. The offense is abysmal. But I think he apparently looks good in some of his pre-draft workouts. Like the shot's not broken. So if he can improve the shot and even like enough just to sit in the corner and be a reputable guy, he's got a high motor. He's been a good screener, good cutter. All the other stuff is there. He really just cannot shoot, but he is such a good defensive player. If he somehow is there at 30, I think that's a must pick. I mean, he would be just a beast to bring it off the bench. And again, I think going on a team like the Celtics where he works with guys like Brown and Tatum who have come so far, I mean, especially someone like a Jaylen Brown, I mean, look at where Jalen's come on offense. So I think working with guys like that in the Celtics system, again, if we get him to just being like an average offense player, he is so friggin' good at defense that it would be well worth it. So he would be like a dream pick for me. Jalen Tyson and Shireman, two guys I had on my list. Bobby Clinton, we touched on him, who I like as well. Dadier, we touched on him, who I like as well. Tyler Smith, he's kind of a wing, kind of a big, another G League guy. He's like 6'9", 6'10", stretch big though, really good shooter, good defensive player. I think he fits that like 3-and-D mold, which again, with 30th pick, I think if you get a 3-and-D guy who can play right away, that's a home run. Again, the G League guys are always a little sketchy, but to me, he looks good. And then the last guy on my wing list, who is also my Quesarita pick for obvious reasons, Nikola Jurisic. Another Nikola, another Serbian. And I just think a really good player. I was reading into him more and more. And the one thing that stuck out at me, I think it was, I forget which draft guide I was reading, but they had his player comp as less athletic Anthony Edwards. If you can get that in the second round, I mean, give me that like every day of the week. So, I mean, nobody's really as athletic as Anthony Edwards. So if you're even being comped to him and you're someone who might be available in the second round, another guy who like we're not sure if he's going to come over. So if we were going to go that direction, especially, you know, we can get someone in the second round who is we actually like, who's really good. I mean, he's still, I think he just turned 20. He's 6'7", 6'8". He's got a pretty big frame. He's not like that slender. And he can kind of just like do it all in offense. He can create shots. He looks like the superstar, but a lot of the skills haven't come around yet. But again, we don't really need it right away. So I think he is a worthy upside swing, and he's my best bet at a Quesarita guy because again, he checks so many of those boxes where he has like the clear. Is one of the few players in this draft who I think has the superstar upside, and is unknown enough. And I mean, obviously his name's Nikola. He's from Serbia. How could that not be my Quesarita pick? It makes almost too much sense. Jurisic, if he's on the board in the second round, he'd be great guy to stash for sure. And then I just have a handful of guards on my list. Tyler Kolek out of Marquette, one of the best college players in this draft. He's small, questions about his athleticism. He's already kind of old, but he's probably the best passer in this draft, one of the best shooters in this draft. Really smart player, really good offensive player. I think he got Big East Player of the Year maybe even 2 times in a row. He had one of his best games when they beat UConn in the Big East tournament, so we've seen some good moments out of him. Again, just upside might be capped, and I'm not sure he'll make it to 30th, but he would immediately be an awesome backup guard, basically right away. KJ Simpson, another guy, if you remember watching the tournament, might be familiar from Colorado. He's probably the third prospect in the draft out of Colorado, but he was probably their best player, actually. He's just a little older, a little smaller, but again, I think he's like could immediately be a really good backup point guard who could play offense and defense right away, just super reliable. Jamal Shedd out of Houston, similar. Really, really good college player. I feel like these guys always slip through the cracks or a little bit older, a little bit. It's like you almost know what they are, and that seems to hurt their draft stock. But over and over again, we see them kind of pan out. A lot like what happened with us and Peyton Pritchard. So I think these guys are kind of in that mold where you could they'll slip through the cracks and you get them, and it's like not the sexiest pick, not going to be a star. But at this point, again, if the Celtics can get someone to add to their rotation, like that's a massive win from a draft pick. And he fits that mold. AJ Mitchell, another guy. I think he went to UC Santa Barbara. He really good player with the ball, super savvy, super smart. Again, just a really good playmaker, really good creator, can defend, can kind of do it all. I think could be available for us there. And then the last 2 guys on my list, the 2 UConn guys who I can't believe are going so far under the radar, and I think could both be available for us at 54. Cam Spencer and Tristan Newton. Spencer, question marks about his athleticism, this, that, and whatever, but he's probably the best shooter in the entire draft. Awesome guy. Develop him, turn him into like a Sam Hauser type. I mean, this guy's lights out. I can't believe he's going so late in the draft for how awesome of a shooter he was, off the catch, off the dribble, unlimited range. And I mean, we just saw him. He's a dog, as we know from those UConn teams.
I would take Cam Spencer, definitely.
And Tristan Newton, same thing, kind of the opposite. He did it all, just wasn't a great shooter. But if the shooting comes around, I mean, he's a little undersized maybe for a wing player, but awesome defensive player, awesome connective piece, really good playmaker. And again, those are 2 guys who both come from winning backgrounds, and we've already seen them contribute to winning in a big way, and guys who I don't think would have big egos want to come in and I think they just love to fit in as role players, and that's what we're looking for. So that's kind of the end of my list. And then I have a list of guys who I kind of don't love, if we want to get into that, but I don't know.
Right. We'll wait because I wanted you to list some guys you don't love, because I feel like you were just listing the whole entire draft class, like you were just sort of flexing that you knew every player in the draft.
Yeah,
but
that's
impressive stuff nonetheless. Yeah, impressive stuff nonetheless. I have a couple guys with if we do pick with the 54th that I did sort of like, that I also kind of thought would fit kind of what we might need. I like. And again, maybe these guys are going to be, maybe you're about to rip these guys apart for why you don't like them, since you didn't name them. Yeah. But I'm going to go out and say, Jalen Bridges from Baylor.
He almost made my list. No, that's a good pick.
All right. I like Bridges. Again, wingspan ratio guy. Mm-hmm. But I just think, again, the size, 6'8", he seems like a pretty decent shooter. Yeah. I just sort of think that if like Brad had his way, we would just have a team of like 6'8" to 6'10", 6'11" with one 7-foot crazy guy. And I also like because again, I'm thinking about the centers and sort of, where do we go from, with Allen Porzingis both likely to miss some time. Al is getting a little long in the tooth anyway. Down the road, think a little bit. International Ulrich Komchi from Cameroon.
Yeah, okay.
All right. This guy, I mean, 6'11", he has a good wingspan ratio. He's positive for that. I don't know. He just, again, they take their stats and they base them like out over like per 36, and they just seem pretty impressive. Like 3 blocks per game, again, extrapolated out over per 36.
Well, I mean,
minutes.
also who's he playing?
I mean, I don't know. Fucking someone in Cameroon.
Yeah, he played at the NBA Academy in Africa. So I mean,
NBA Academy in Africa.
Okay, in the stats, but he's
okay,
extremely raw. But he's extremely raw. Again, if we're looking for like a project type, he'd be it. But
if you're picking 54th, I mean,
I could easily see him just never playing in the NBA. But again, worth the pick. He's just it's just hard to project because he's so friggin' raw. But
also, love the name Ulrich. Huge fan of Knight's Tale. Great movie.
One of the youngest players in the draft for sure. And I mean, again, huge ceiling. It's tough to draft guys like that on a team where it's like we don't really have the opportunity to develop project type of players. But for a team that does, he'd be definitely one of the main guys on my list. Love
put him in Maine, let him thrive.
Yeah, I would have no qualms if he did it. I would just be surprised. I don't think he's the type of player we're probably targeting, but I could be wrong, and that would be cool to see. Bridges, though, I think is a perfect, like you said. I think when in doubt, draft a 3-and-D wing mold guy and hope that it works out. And Bridges absolutely fits that. Big wing, can shoot, can play defense. Like you almost can't go wrong.
This guy's kind of like projected a little bit like early second round, so it might be a little bit too soon for us to take him at 30, and then too late for us to take him at the late pick. But I also liked Dylan Jones out of Weber State.
Yeah. Another good pick. And another guy, again, who kind of fits, like you said, checks a lot of those boxes. And I think at this point, if, the draft in itself is obviously a massive crapshoot, but I think we do at least have a pretty good idea of like what Brad, Zarin, and the rest of the front office have in mind, like what they look for in a player, whether it's draft, free agency, whatever. Like there's obviously a certain kind of players the team really likes. And again, I mean, I think could be available for sure. And I think he would check a lot of the boxes. I mean, I'm looking one mock draft I see has him going 56. So he definitely could be available. He's another, I think, a little bit of an older player, a little kind of like, is he a guard? Is he a wing player? Like he's a little small for the wing, doesn't really have the ball skills to play guard in the NBA perhaps, but just a really good already player and someone I think could come in and possibly
6'11" wingspan.
Wow. And he's only like 6'5", right? So that's
6'5", yeah.
That's great wingspan.
I swear to God, I didn't set myself up by wingspan, but that's
Are you sure
that's an underrated stat.
Did you accidentally sort by wingspan?
That's like when we used to like live. We used to like the NBA Live 03 drafts, just like sort by height and just I'm taking that guy's bucket. Yeah. Total coincidence. All right, so just to prove to us that you don't like every single person in the draft, why don't you go ahead and give us, and are these, like, would you say that these are people that you don't want the Celtics to draft, or you just think generally speaking?
Yes. So
you're not just shitting on guys in general.
A little of both. I just did want to say some guys who I think are like guys we could realistically draft and will definitely get drafted. But I just don't love them for one reason or another. So go through the list. Johnny Furphy from Kansas. I just don't see it. I think he's too raw. I don't think he has the skill. Like, I just don't think he's going to develop into a good NBA player. He'll probably be gone before 30 anyway, but I just don't see it with Furphy. Don't love it. Terrence Shannon Jr. Could be a good player to me. I know he just, was proven not guilty in those rape charges, but to me, that's just a little too much baggage to even bother getting involved with for a guy who like might be good, might not. I'm all set. Kyle Filipowski, I've seen a lot of people say they want him. Obviously, versatile two-way center, but there's just too much Duke already on the team.
Yeah, we've made enough concessions. Yeah.
Yeah, so for that reason, I'm out. McCullough from Kansas. To me, again, just like I don't believe the shooting from last season. I think he's more the player we saw before that. I think that would be
really solid sounding name though overall.
Yes, I thought you might say that. The Kentucky guys, Justin Edwards, again, just didn't see it with him. Really disappointing year. This to me screams like James Young all over again, where people are just like, oh, like good prospect. Kentucky has to be good. And I don't love that. Kind of same with Antonio Reeves. I know he's a guard, a little lesser of a prospect, but again, just smaller guy. And I think too many people are just like still believing in that. Like, well, if he went to Kentucky and played guard, he's gonna be good. I think.
Did Kentucky have a single person on the team over 6'8" this year? Every single Kentucky guy I'm seeing on this thing is short as fuck.
I mean, they definitely did. I just probably not.
Reed Shepherd,
maybe not NBA prospects.
Dillingham. Yeah, I guess maybe not the prospects, but
yeah,
he's the tallest one, but he's still short, 6'7".
Pele Larson from Arizona, sniper, but I just don't. I think he'll be a defensive. He busts his ass on defense, but I think he's the kind of guy who could get targeted, and I'm not sure he would fit well into what the Celtics do. And then the last guy on my list, Bronny James. I think I'm just all set with it, unless it's just to hold him hostage and be petty. I don't know. I think I'm good with it, but I think that's let another team get involved in that sideshow, unless it's like really advantageous for us asset wise. But I think he's a name that will be talked about, obviously far more than his play commands. And again, I think the Celtics we got a good thing going. We're at this point in our franchise's trajectory. I don't think that's something we need to involve ourselves in as much as the Bill Simmons of the world might want it, and it would be entertaining. But
yeah, I definitely have cool on that original Bill Simmons thing about just like holding it hostage because it becomes a little bit more about because I don't think he's even going to take him at 30th. I think he's going to be late second round if anything. But
yeah,
yeah,
I'm good. I'm
off the Bronny show.
Yeah, I
also love how they now are like saying. I think I mentioned this in the last pod too, but like Clutch Sports is like LeBron isn't going to just go somewhere because Bronny's there. It's like, okay, well, who made you guys started that whole thing anyway? They're like this. It's like, yeah.
Where did anyone get that idea?
Contrary to popular belief, yeah. Shut the fuck up. Yeah.
So stupid.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. I mean,
all right. Yeah.
We touched on a lot of people. Do you have any other names you're questioning, or any thoughts on any of the guys I said, or anyone else you want to ask me about anything on the list? I mean, again, that was pretty.
Sure. I'll throw one more random name. You see what I can get.
Who's your Quesarito pick?
My Quesarito pick?
Did you have one?
I mean, I guess I didn't fully dub him as a Quesarito pick, but the guy from Weber State, he just kind of right around that same time.
Fair.
That kind of around. I think it was around. What was he like? 40.
Yeah,
he was like 41st, 40th. Something. Yeah. But yeah, no. I mean, if I'd tell us a little bit about Carlton Carrington.
Oh, Bub Carrington out of Pitt. Love him. Won't be available, I don't think, by the time we pick, but he is to me one of the guys who I think has the potential to actually become like a star. Big guard, good.
I got an eye for these guys.
Yeah, no, I like Bub Carrington a lot. I think he'll be off the board before we pick, so he didn't make my list. I just didn't think it was realistic enough. But I mean, as a player, I like him a lot. And I mean, Bub Carrington, what a great name. Again, big guard. I think he could become a really good player. So I think he's the kind of guy that look at those teams that we don't like, kind of around the middle of the draft, like the Heat, the Sixers. I'm hoping those teams.
I'll go.
Don't
my Quesarito pick
because I think he could be really good.
Will be Melvin Ajinka.
Melvin Ajinka. Oh God. Okay, that's a deep.
That's my Quesarito pick, or that's my not Quesarito. What was it? What was Quesarito? Oh yeah. I was thinking cheesy gordita. I got Taco Bell on the mind, I guess.
Yeah, wow. I'm getting hungry.
No free ads.
All
right. Yeah. You got anything else for that? I mean, this is a pretty thorough draft breakdown, I think. So the draft is Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Are they doing the first and second round both on one?
No.
Night?
So we've got tonight. Today's Tuesday. You might, whenever you're listening to this pod, the draft Wednesday night, the first round. So again, this has shades of actually the Patriots during like the peak of the dynasty, where I think a lot of fans are going to stay up all night because we have the last pick of the draft, and it's probably going to be midnight, and it's going to be like, oh, the Celtics have traded the 30th pick for the 42nd and like a future second or something. You're going to go to bed pissed off, as we won't make a pick, and then the second round is Thursday, and I want to say it's not Thursday night. I want to say it starts at like 3 p.m. It's super weird. No idea why that's the case, but it's like a Thursday afternoon is the second round of the draft. Again, not really sure why that's the case, but
makes sense.
Does it? Makes sense to know?
No, that was sarcasm. Laying it on pretty thick.
Yeah.
Well, at least it'll be easier to stay up and watch our second round picks.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm super excited.
Unless, of course, you're working.
Well, right. I mean, Euro Cup action on at the same time, so a lot of screens, we're blessed for the summer. But I think, as we kind of said in the beginning, how you mentioned how like there had been so little prep time, it is crazy to just think the turnaround in general. Where again, if the series had gone longer, Game 7 of the finals would have been Sunday night. So the Celtics or whoever was in the final, I mean, every team, that's like 4-day turnaround where you're literally, we'd still be.
Would have been this last Sunday we just had.
Yeah. The other night,
that's
like
crazy.
it would have been literally 2 nights ago, would have been Game 7. The parade would probably be the morning of the draft. Like, it's just an outrageous turnaround already. Like, thank God we took care of it in 5 and gave Zarin and Brad a chance to sober up and hopefully do a little bit of research. But it just goes to show how fast the NBA moves. And that's another thing where you're like, oh, people are still talking about this title. It's like, yeah, of course we are. But that's the nature of the NBA. They wanted to make it a 24/7, 365 league. They've done it, and that's the good part where the other teams who are like, I hate the Celtics, can immediately move on and be like, mock draft me, and it's here. We got the draft Wednesday, Thursday. Free agency, I think, kicks off last day of June, which is less than a week away. Like, it's all about to happen. The biggest transaction cycle of the season is about to get underway. There's going to be a whole ton of shit going down in the next few days, a lot of moving parts, probably no big fireworks for the Celtics, but it's with Brad, you never know. You never know what he has up his sleeve, so anything could happen. I mean, I'm not going to rule it out. It's going to be crazy. I think the second apron has made things even crazier, and I think the one good thing from everything I've seen is that, like, most of the teams trying to compete with us are kind of screwed, and the Celtics aren't, which is just awesome that we're in this position we're in, and we owe it to having such a good organization, and the guys who have set us up for success have made it, like, so we really don't have a ton to do or worry about this offseason other than just kind of trying to make moves on the margins here and there where, like, you look at our chief rivals, like, the Bucks are talking about blowing it up. The Sixers have one player under contract. The Heat.
I love how the Bucks are like, we will make Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis available.
No,
I thought those guys were untradeable. Oh my god,
Portis and Connaughton. It was not even Lopez.
Oh, Connaughton.
Like, nobody wants Connaughton. Like, no shit, he's available if anyone offered. But that shows like how dire their situation is. They are fucked. Which what a shame.
What a shame.
But exciting time. I'm super pumped to see it. Also, just got some breaking news during the show. I don't know if you saw, but the Celtics announced that Porzingis suffered a torn retinaculum and a dislocated posterior tibialis tendon in Game 2 of the
So it did happen?
We essentially knew surgery in the coming days. It sounds like he's not going to be playing for Latvia in the Olympics, barring something. So again, none of this is like shocking. Again, I think just hats off to Porzingis for being willing to gut it.
Wasn't it originally he had a torn thing that could cause that other thing, and now it sounds like it did cause that?
I can barely understand any of the words I just said, so I'm not going to pretend I really know the situation. But the long and short of it is he needs surgery.
I think we kind of expected that. Real quick, too, just how the NBA news, JJ Redick to the Lakers, thoughts?
I mean, wow, just wow.
Huge for podcasters.
Well, he's running from the grind. Kind of hate that.
Yeah, that's true.
Taking a
also, I kind of love
job with less.
I kind of love how people. I love how people are like, he's just a podcaster. It's like, okay, well, he did play in the league for a long time.
Right.
Right. Like, I get that he has no coaching experience, and that's a knock. But people are like, wow, you can just go from hosting a podcast to coach a Lakers. It's like, okay, well, he did do a few things before that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I necessarily like think it was a smart pick, and maybe it will, maybe it won't be. Well, I think it's gonna be kind of like I don't know. I just don't think they have enough good players on their team that it'll make much of a difference. But
to me, the biggest angle and the biggest issue is just the fact that his podcast is with LeBron James, who basically runs the Lakers. So he's basically going to a team like his boss is now basically his buddy and his podcast host, which that's to me is the biggest part that like it isn't going to work. It's just because it's the Lakers, because it's LeBron, because it's the Clutch show. Like it's already just such a shit show. Now bringing in this guy who is his buddy has even greater shit show potential. They're out there saying like, yeah, me and LeBron didn't even talk about the job. It's just like, it's such obvious bullshit.
The audible groan in the room with that guy. When he said, I didn't talk to LeBron about the Lakers job. There's some guy in the back. She's like, it's
insulting to even pretend. Like you can say just like, yeah, we're friends. We work together. Obviously we talked about it and move on. Like like nobody thinks it's just, again, it's like insulting. If I was a Lakers fan, I'd be like, why are you even like insulting my intelligence? By pretending like LeBron is so committed to making it seem like he's not involved, where we all have 20 years of evidence showing that he's so overly involved. Like this is the guy who his agent is basically saying if he wants to, he'll make the team use their first round pick to draft his son, who's barely an NBA prospect. But then he's like, yeah, JJ Redick didn't even know he was
crazy. My boy got hired.
He was interested in the job. Like that's so weird. So it's just like, come on, man. But again, like, if you take away all of that nonsense and the shit show that it is, and this was just Redick randomly being hired by some other job, I would say great hire. I mean, Redick, like you said, he played in the league for a long time. He's been an analyst. We know from listening to his podcast stuff, I mean, the guy knows the friggin' game. Like, if anything, I'm concerned how much he loves Missoula and the Celtics. He's going to try to copy us, which I hate. He'll probably be a good coach. It might not be with the Lakers, but he's super competitive, super good will to win.
Yeah, I think this first one might not go well. I think the next, whatever team hires him next, I think will be in good shape.
Right, but like you said, I think too much is being made about the podcast connection, where it's like he has all these other credentials and acumen that will make him a good coach. And I mean, again, we've seen it recently with Steve Nash.
I think that those are the things that make it.
Chauncey Billups. Like, we've seen lots of former players just get hired with no experience, but it's like the fact that he did a podcast in between is making people be like, oh my God.
Yeah, but I would say none of those guys had immediate success. That's what I'm getting at. Like,
not necessarily.
I think it'll take him a little bit of time. He knows the X's and O's, but I think the biggest learning curve for him is just going to be kind of like, how do you
being a coach?
Coaching, right? Yeah, it's different. It's different. Just like sitting with another basketball player talking like, "Oh, curls and this shit like that." It's like, "Oh, this is great." But when it's like, you know, you fucked up doing this, like now you have to call the guy. You know, so it'll be interesting. I do think whatever the next job he has, he'll have more success.
Well, right, especially for him
because the Lakers are a fucking
to learn that part of the job on the fly in a team that's hilariously has championship expectations, which is like expectations couldn't be further from reality. It's like, what has this team done? And what are they set up to do that would make those expectations realistic? Like, that would be like Charles Lee getting his intro press conference to the Hornets being like, it's championship or bust. Like, that's the expectation. Just be like, no, it isn't. Like, that's not a fair or realistic expectation. If that's the expectation, this is going to end horribly, obviously. So, I mean, we love Redick, but I'm excited to get to root against him again. And I hope that this completely blows up in the most comical and entertaining way for Lakers shot and fraud people like ourselves. But then I would love to see JJ get another shot and succeed elsewhere. And don't you fucking dare come for our Sam Cassell.
No. Well, they just promote Sam Cassell to make him like.
Yeah, but I don't think that like locks. I don't know. Anything could still happen.
That felt like a locked in, but yeah, don't do it either way. Don't do it either way.
It was a rumor. Right. It was a rumor.
All right. Well, yeah. So this is a draft. Again, we'll keep on posted again on. We'll probably do another show after the post draft show.
Yeah.
Sometime next week. So we're gonna try to get we're gonna try to get shows still after everyone at least weekly. So we're gonna probably get ourselves onto like an actual schedule. I know we talked about like Thursdays, maybe recorded Thursday, releasing on Fridays. But look for next week. Follow at Chuddy's Corner. You'll get all the updates. You'll always know what's going on in the Chuddyverse. But yeah, so good luck, sellers, in the draft. Everyone keep enjoying the summer of champions.
One more thing. Celtics are the fucking champs. Still.
Yes. Never forget. We did it. All right. Chud, take care.
Peace out, Chuddy heads.